Be here tonight, guys. Let me make a couple adjustments here on my screen. Yeah, looking good. Good to be here. Hold on. Some reason I got signed out. All right, there we are. How's everybody doing this evening? Mike McWilliams, your upstairs to the right music channel station. We are so glad to be here live with you, as always, on a Wednesday night. We call this the Wednesday Night Hump here on this Upstairs to Right Music channel. And I always start out by saying that I'm always grateful for everybody who takes the time to watch. Your time is a valuable thing. Spending a little bit of yours with me on a Wednesday night like this is really appreciated. Something special to me, and don't take it for granted. Um, yeah, I have got to log myself back in. I have logged myself out. All right, there we go. All right. Just doing a little bit of housekeeping here. And sometimes you delete the wrong thing. There we go. Now I can see myself. All right. All right. Let's move this out of the way. It's not serving any purpose. Hey, everybody. I saw the weirdest thing. Saw a couple of weird things this week, actually. A good evening to you, Ben and Scott. Hope you guys are doing well. Mr. Watson, how are you guys doing? I saw this ad for this Moses AI kept popping up in my feed. And, this was on the tails of a video that I had recently saw where a guy, a YouTuber, took his guitar and he played one of his songs, singing it and playing the chords into a similar AI like Moses. And in about 10 seconds, it took the song, the guitar chords, it heard it, and correctly, all the changes were there. And in about 10 seconds, wrote 3 different arrangements for that song. And, that blew my mind. I have to say that absolutely blew my mind. So I wanted to do a YouTube video about it on my end, and so Scott, what's wrong? I'm not well. Broke a rib and fractured another Monday. I can barely breathe. Oh no, Scott! I am so sorry to hear that, brother. That you had that happen to you. Just chill tonight, man. Just relax. I'm glad you're here. I really appreciate you being here, man. Under those conditions, you know. Obviously something bad happened, brother. Just try to sit back and relax. I know you're doing that the best you can, and you got my prayers. Um, yeah, man, dang, Scott, that's terrible. Um, I hope you heal up quickly too. Um, and it blew my mind. So I went to the website for this Moises, which an interesting title, but anyway, a name for it. But in any case, and thought I would sign up for it because I wanted to show how it went on, on my channel. I got to the permissions page, and don't you know that those suckers were saying that if you sign up, like through your Google account or something like that, they have the right to observe all of your information, public and private. I couldn't believe it when I read that. I said, for what reason would anybody sign up for something like that? And second of all, what crack are they on? That is some strong crack. And so I politely declined. So no, I won't be doing that video, but just a couple of things there. Second time breaking them. Worse is I'm only halfway through my house renewal. Anyone swing a hammer? Well, you're not going to be swinging a hammer anytime soon, man. You seem to be in good spirits, so that's good. Uh, Yeah, I've never had broken ribs, so that must be tough. That I can imagine every breath is just a little bit of agony. Um, yeah, man. So I'm gonna put the fact aside that this AI took this guy's song. He was sitting there just playing, recording it and playing it, and then he pushed, produce, and then it produced three different versions, and they were all pretty decent. I have to be honest with you. A little eagle-ish, but still good. But the fact that this company, if you sign up with them, you're signing away all your personal and private rights. I think that we are not tiptoeing, but stridently walking into hell on earth. There's no other way I can put it. Because you have got to be insane to agree to something like that. You've got to be insane, first of all. Second of all, this AI thing and taking over your rights here on YouTube. YouTube is taking YouTubers' videos, particularly their shorts, and they are AI imaging them. They're adding, things to them where some of them guys are saying, "Hey, I'm playing guitar. We got like six fingers." I didn't have six fingers when I recorded it. I'm not a friggin' Nephilim. So I just see this pathway, guys. And as far as, the software that does this kind of AI music creation, you know, it's not there is it is not copyrightable. Can't copyright that AI music and generated music. However, because there's so much of it out there, Spotify has great gobs of lists of AI generated music. I don't understand they're not getting paid for it because they can't copyright it. Maybe there's some other something there that they're getting. But in any case, it further devalues real music. I'll let you think about that. That if you flood the market with, worthless, not virtually worthless, but worthless AI music, that dilutes the rest of the market, and it drives the value of music as a commodity out there even lower. Now you say, well, music shouldn't be a commodity. It shouldn't be, but it should be because if people make their living off of them, off of make So I understand both sides of the argument, but of course I swing on the side of it pays people's bills, and stuff like this and this steady march into creative destruction through AI is really going to continue to devalue music and cause a lot of musicians to go out of business. So, and then on top of that, they want you to sign over what your personal rights. The only thing you got your personal dignity. The only thing you got left. You know, so it was ugly. That was ugly. When I saw that, I had to share that with a producer friend of mine. He was like, "Well, I don't like to use that language here on my channel too much," but you know, his reaction was "OF," and it wasn't OnlyFans. What am I drinking tonight? I am drinking hummingbird juice, pure, 100%, hummingbird juice, because I am exhausted. I'm tired. And this sugar water that I drink, because that's essentially what it is, gives me that extra little bit of a blip that I need in order to make it through the evenings when I'm tired like this. Keeps the brain lubricated, but it's no good for you. But you crash off of it too. It's basically, um, Calypso is the maker, and it's called Island Punch. Yeah. Corporate music suits is running out of songwriters to rip off, so now they're turning to AI and end users to rip off for free. Companion. Hey, how you doing, Companion? Yeah, don't disagree with that. Um, nice sounds good. No, it does not, Ben. It is. Yeah, I would not pass this out to my friends. If you came over to visit, I would not offer you to drink this. I'd give you something slightly better. But anyway, beware of new artists who come out of nowhere with a huge catalog of radio-friendly music, like the Doors. So this stuff hasn't. Again, I point out to you guys that this is nothing new. It's just got more diabolical. They do things according to the technology at the time. And technology at that time allowed for the door situation to come out, and technology of this day is allowing for the shenanigans that we shall see, coming forth. So there's that. That blew my mind, guys. Though I don't know if I can find that video, but it was actually a guy that I watch who doesn't do music at all. He just does basically, life things. Young guy out of Florida that I really like. Seems like a really cool guy. And he was featuring it on his channel. He's like, hey guys, look what's going on in the music business. Those guys are screwed. I was like, well, that seems to be the common consensus. you know, um, Tonight I want to talk about restoration versus buying new. Where's the real value? I always talk about value in these live streams. And to be frank with you, when I was sitting down to write tonight's script, I had a complete and utter zero. Because for some reason, for the last 2 or 3 days, my brain has not been working. I cannot explain it. I think I know why, but my brain has just decided not to work. But with this list and with this discussion, this is something close to home. So it's something that I can talk about with a certain amount of authority and experience, and also something that ties into my usual greater discussion about value. And um, really, value is something that's subjective. One person's value is another man's bargain, another man's expensive. Um, or bargain on the other end of that. But, I think that you really have to apply a desire to make sure that you're seeking the best value in everything. In everything. I got a friend of mine who complains about his car. Beautiful car, lovely car, and breaks down about every 3 months. And my opinion of it is that's not very good value, especially for what he's paying for it. And I think an equivalent analogy to that, what my friend is going through with his car, is what we have to deal with in the guitar market. Um, you know, we are seeing, and I'll bring it up just to use it as a good example. The Fender low tier, Fender label low tier guitar that's produced in Indonesia, the Fender Strat. You being priced in the neighborhood of around 700 US dollars. Um, I think that this was a Strat that 10 years ago you could have got an American made Strat for that money. So if you look at it like that, you ask yourself, would a guitar like that really be a good value proposition? Or would it be wiser for me to turn around and try to find a guitar to restore? That's if I had the money, $700 right now, I didn't have any other guitar, and I had to make that kind of value choice. What would I rather do? And that's kind of the jumping off point of where I want to start off tonight with our discussion. And uh, I am going to be doing a lot more restoration work coming up here because I have to reduce my margins. My clients, my main client has asked me to reduce my margins down, which means that I'm going to have to buy guitars that are B grade guitars that are going to require a little bit of work and restoration. But uh, there's value there because, of course, those are all vintage Japanese guitars I'm talking about. But let's flip that around for, again, an American made guitar like a Fender Strat from 10 years ago that's slightly beat up, that you could probably, no, not probably, I already looked it up, that I know that you can get out there on the open market for around $700. Now you might have to do some restoration work on it. It may have a nut that has to be replaced, or a bent tremolo, or maybe none of that at all. But the reality is that as a value proposition, and again, this is our jumping, just so we can set the stage here. The value proposition between that brand new Indonesian made Fender labeled guitar and a 10-year-old American Fender is just not there. You would have to be insane to, I would rather in that case, if I had a choice between the two, if I had to do a little restoration work for the same amount of money on an American made Fender from 10 years ago as opposed to the Indonesian one now for the same money, guess what I would do? And I'm pretty sure you would do the same thing too. It's again, if we look at these things as value propositions, if we would put everything else aside, you know that we can. We don't care about where it's made necessarily, because there can be value propositions on stuff made in Asia, obviously, as I've pointed out. But putting everything aside and just looking at what was the real value being offered there. And I think that's a really great starting point for most things in our lives, our cars, our air conditioning units, the dishwasher, things of that nature. But we're talking about guitars tonight. But I just kind of want to start tonight by setting the stage with that analogy. I have to recommend to you a video of this guy who has no musical knowledge but brought a drum kit and piano and made something uniquely special. Scott, I will click on that. And 18 years ago, man, Scott, yeah, I love it. When I pull up your videos, they are pretty well archived. If that's 18 years ago, I'll check that out. What else is going on? You can get some really good made in Mexico strats for that. You can get a good American. You can get American made strats for that in the right place in the States. Believe me, 10, 15-year-old American made strats you can get for that same kind of money. Made in Mexico strats you can actually get for less. You can get for less. Here in Europe, they're going for about $600, which tells 600 euros, which tells me that they're going in the mid 500s in the States. High-end made in Mexico Fenders are some of my favorites. Yep. Is relicking a guitar considered anti-restoration? Yeah, that would be the opposite coin, because restoration is about taking something and making it have the appearance of new, whereas relicking would be taking something new and giving it the appearance of being old. Soft relicking seems harmless enough. Yeah, that's what I do. I do soft relicking. But hard relics like Murphy Lab, well, that's in the opposite direction. Charging 3K or more for somebody to throw rocks or drag it behind their Chevy truck with chains is always the one I have in my head. Um, Off the shelf Les Paul standard. Yeah, And so, again, there's a value proposition. Do I want to pay 3K for actually more uh, for this Les Paul for somebody to beat up for me, or Or why don't I just buy a 90s Les Paul? It's probably already beat up, you know. I too am a big fan of Mexican vendors. Ain't nothing wrong with them. Nothing at all. I told you guys, Fern, who's back. He was on holiday, but he's working on my Squire, um, Affinity. He had a set of made in Mexico Fender Strat pickups, and he's putting those in there for me. He gave them to me. So yeah, I got no problem with that at all. That's great. Um, you know, really honestly, value proposition guys like that. For example, my Squire Affinity, I took it apart, um, refinished the body, the color, changed the hardware, and I think that that would be, and it was beat up. If you guys remember, that guitar was beat up. It was original Olympic white and beat up. But that thing is a beauty now. I can't wait to get it back in because that color and that gold hardware, everything just looks lovely. So what is that? And again, like I said, that was done for pennies. I would rather rock that guitar than any Squire Affinity that's new on the market right now because I can buy a used one again for $50. You can buy Affinities from between $50 to $80. Mine was 80. And for a few bucks you can fix it up and you'd be, pretty good. The necks are a little thin for me, but for some applications, it's actually all right. But, again, a value proposition there. I hate to beat up on Fender. We touched upon Les Paul's a little bit here, but the truth of the matter is it's across the board. Across the board. Material costs, wood, hardware, plastics are higher than ever. And because of that, budget models aren't really budget anymore. And on top of that, the Trump tariffs take effect. I believe some of them took effect as of today, particularly with India and countries like that. Now, India was going to be the next pivot point I believe, for Epiphone to move out of China and move into India. They were already starting to produce some acoustic guitars in India. And I think that the Trump tariffs have really kind of blocked that movement with Epiphone because they're not going to be saving anything until, and those tariffs are here to stay, I believe. I believe that they're locked in place. And so therefore, it's just from an economic model, it's just not an attractive thing as it was a year ago, just a year ago, we'll say, or less. So what that means for restoration also, because the tariffs are going to affect the ability to get parts and things of that nature. Even in the United States, the Temu stuff is gone. And by the way, also, PostNL and most of the European post office are not shipping things to the United States as of 2 or 3 days ago. They've restricting shipments to the United States until the situation there or globally sorts itself out, which means that selling guitars and moving guitars from here to the States also now, for me, is not an avenue that I can go down. So the tariff thing has ripple effects across the board on a lot of things. And because the material costs are up, parts and refinishing materials, paint, sandpaper, polish, replacement hardware, for example, stuff that I'm always buying, also increased in price. So the cost for me to do a restoration now is slightly more. Thankfully, again, like I said, I'm a hoarder. I'm very neat, but I'm a neat hoarder. Everything has its place, but I do hoard a lot of parts and stuff like that. So I am okay. I've run out of varnish. I was checking do I have that even handy near me? Thought I did. I was checking my spray cans and seeing what I had. I've run out of my not polyurethane, but nitro spray. So I'm gonna have to buy some more of that, and that is not cheap, especially if you want to get a good quality one. I need that for some restoration. I had poly spray. I've got some, but that's going to be something that just to do touch ups in some areas. That's something that I'm going to have to do, and it just adds up, guys. It adds up. But you can often restore still, even with that being said, all that being said, you can still restore, I believe, at a fraction of buying new if you're smart about your sourcing. I think that's the key to that, is being smart about your sourcing. I too am a big fan of the Mexican fenders. Ain't nothing wrong with them. Yeah, I think we said that. Let's see. You know, I use a lot of vinegar, lemon juice, baking soda, and fine steel wool. And you'll say, well, what do you use a lot of that for? Well, I use that for corroded surfaces. See, if I get a guitar where the nuts and the screws and all that stuff is starting to rust and corrode, I will take it all off and I will give it a bath, a three-part bath. First in vinegar, then in baking soda, then a scrub down and a rinse off. And 99% of the time that works. That is a soft relicing. I mean, a soft restoration, because you're taking the existing parts and you're just restoring them. So that kind of work requires a lot of elbow grease. And however, grease in that equation really is your only true cost. You know, a little bit of elbow grease and a couple of euros worth of materials. The outcome is, as you have seen with some of the restoration work that I've shown you that I've done, is a playable, good looking guitar that anybody would be happy to buy. And I think sometimes I think musicians are taking better care of their gear these days. It's more precious to them. I've seen more examples of that. Gone are the days of guys just throwing their gear in the back of a truck. That would not happen these days. At least I hope not. And therefore, major restoration is not really required. And anyway, if you really want to get into major restoration, you really, really, really should know what you're doing first. And so just light restoration work is still affordable. And the real only cost to you is going to be a little bit of elbow grease. And, you know, in time, you know, and that's okay, you know. You're taking something and you're making it absolutely brand new. Again, I can say for that Squire Affinity that I just, that Fern is finishing for me, you know. However, there are times when restoration is not worth it. It's absolutely not worth it. And I will not, when you're buying a cheap guitar that needs too much work, neck reset, refretting, rewinds on the pickups, cost can quickly exceed buying something new or a clean used guitar. So don't, you know, a lot of guys that get into restoration projects and they get in over their head, or they don't budget for it. Again, this goes back to sourcing. You can pick up a $200 fixer-upper and then spend another $500 on it to do pro work and parts. You could have just bought, you know, for that $700, again, like I said, getting back to that figure, you could have bought yourself, certainly made in Mexico, and if you searched around on the right day, you could have got yourself an American-made Strat, for example, for that kind of money. So sometimes it's not worth it. And restoration work really is only for the guys who have a lot of parts. And it's funny, you should get the parts before you get the guitar. I know that sounds like putting the cart before the horse, but it actually works because you're like, well, I'm going to do this. Oh, yeah, I got one or two of those. See, again, I'm more interested myself in finding parts than anything else. When I go to Vinendal, one of the first things I do, I told you, there's a guy who sells parts. It's always in the back of the hall. I always make a beeline there first, and I start going through things and start trying to negotiate with them on parts. And I bring them home, and I put them in one of these envelope cases here on the floor. I've got three, and in boxes, and I'll forget about it, and then a guitar will come through and I've got it. So it's not a case of me getting a guitar and saying, okay, now I'm gonna get a Fender bridge and I'm gonna put a locking, and I'm gonna change the tuners and this, that, and the other, and that really starts to add up. I think we're all aware of that. Again, don't do that. If you can solder, polish, and do a setup work yourself, you're miles ahead. Learn how to solder. Learn how to sand and polish. And do setup work, set up your own guitars yourself. Every skill you learn is money saved. Say that again. Every skill that you learn is money saved. Which means that you can take on a slightly more challenging refinish, restoration project. You can say, hey, I'm gonna paint this guitar, sand it, get all surfaces flat, prime it, paint it, go through those steps, and do it super cheap. Because that's a skill that you can develop. Soldering, wiring, even pickup winding. Some people have taken that up. If you're paying others for all the things that I just mentioned, restoration stops becoming cost effective unless it's a high value guitar. See, I can have Fern finish for me because Fern is a great friend and he always gives me a discount rate. Anyway, most of the work's already done by the time I get it to him. He just has to just give it that Luther's final, niceness to it. Get it as good as it's going to be. But it's worth it to me. However, if I had to pay him to do all the work that I did in order to, most of that work he does not do paint work. He only does natural finishes. If I had paid him to do that, again, it doesn't make any sense. So every skill that you learn is $1 saved. So there's that. I'm trying to think of any guitar brands or model in the last 30 years that's even worth the effort and money to restore. 30 years, you say? So that takes us back to 95. That's a good point. Mid-90s, even the made in Japan stuff was kind of kaputs. I would say if you could find one of the Les Paul classics from that era, especially from around that time, and it was in so-so condition, and you could get it at a reasonable price, I would buy it and restore it because those guitars are made very similar. The early Les Paul classics are made very similar to the stuff that they're doing in the custom shop now. Long neck tenon, bridge in, and post in the wood directly. Stuff like that. Maybe the Slash Snake Pit Epiphone, top of my head. Yeah, that's another one too. But that's a collector's thing. So therefore, you can't get a player's grade Slash because unless you can find all the original parts, nobody's really going to be interested in that. That's kind of one of those ones where it gets a little funky. I think it's wise for anyone going into a project should know what you want. Don't rush into anything. Plan every detail, Scott says, and expect unexpected problems. Budget your money and time equally. I agree. If you know how to do most of those tasks yourself, again, yeah, that's another way of saving money in that equation. So there is warranty and reliability, of course, is a plus side when buying new. Uh, you know, if you're buying off of eBay, there's a new scam out there for Firefly guitars. Guitar Max was talking about that. He said there's another scam going on out there, and it's regarding Firefly guitars. And I was like, wow, Firefly guitars are so popular now that people are scamming off them. That's deep. I might have to get my hands on one of those. If I bought it, I'd have to keep it because it has no value over here, I don't think. But well, maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe that's worth looking into. But again, you know, what's the value? I'd have to really look at that and see if there's a good value there. Guitar Max seems to think that they are, but dig that. You know, there's scams out there, and if you buy off of Facebook Marketplace or something like that, you don't have a warranty, so therefore used. So therefore, you're not getting that benefit. If you need something dependable for gigging and don't want to gamble on restoration, new has its place. New guitars depreciate, but if you know what you're getting, restored guitars are hit or miss unless they're vintage and desirable, and even then it can be hit and miss. And sometimes you just want to have, just like that new car smell, you want to have that new guitar feeling. That's human nature, and that's just the way it is. Maddie Two Hats in the house. How you doing, Maddie? Good to have you. Good to see you, brother, on the Wednesday Night Hub. I think Firefly has a direct website. That is correct. They have a direct website. It's somehow or another people don't understand that they list what they have, and when it sells out, that's it, and then they make some more, and then they list those. That's how it goes. So you have to be kind of hovering on the Firefly page if you want to get the latest new release or something special. That said, anybody who would buy those secondhand, you're asking for a world of trouble because somebody could really rip you on that. Going good, just woke up. I'm trying to get to sleep, Maddie. we're on the opposite end of that rainbow. So you just want that new guitar feeling. So there is times, of course, when buying new, of course, makes sense. Of course. But where's the real value? Restoration really wins out when you can do at least some of the work yourself. Guitar has good bones. I always talk about that good bones thing, and I know if you've had enough guitars in your hand, Scott, I'm looking at you, not now, but you've had enough guitars in your hands, you know the ones that have good bones. Solid wood, straight neck, decent frets. And a restoration wins over when you're patient and willing to learn, has been pointed out here. Patience, I think. Patience. Anybody watch the TV show Ghost? That's my favorite. I've watched all 4 seasons at least 10 times over, all episodes. I love that TV show. It cracks me up. They got this character in there named Patience. You gotta have a little patience. Gotta have a little patience. Buying new really wins out when you need reliability immediately. You don't want to sit there and say, "Oh, does this third pickup work or not? Do I need to take this off and spray the connectors because I'm getting a short here?" You know, you don't want to deal with that. Although there have been instances where you've got new guitars that had all those problems anyway. So not a big guarantee there, but mostly you don't want to spend time experimenting repairs. There's also when buying new wins out. And you factored in time as money. Time is money, but money is not time. I never understood that saying. Anyway, I digress. But the point is, buying used guitars in good shape is really your middle ground in tonight's discussion. It's often a better value than either extreme. restoring something that's beat up, or buying something new. Sometimes the middle ground guys, like I said, is just buying the B model, the B plus shape condition guitars. That's what I am now in the market to do. I can't get the lovely ones like I want anymore because I just have to squeeze my margin down, so I have to bid out on the B plus. But again, I can do the work, and I'm not going to get anything too ridiculous, of course. But I can do the work, and I can save money, and I can make that work in my new business model with my client, what they want. So middle ground, buying used guitars in good shape. You know, knowing what good shape means. In 2025, restoration is still one of the best ways to stretch your money in the guitar world, but only if you're realistic about the cost and the work involved. You know, that's really the deciding factor in that. Being realistic about the cost, and also, is it something? Excuse me, something in my eye. Is it something that is that your forte? Some people, like me, I love working with wood. I love painting it, polishing it, sanding it. I love working with electronics, soldering, and doing stuff like that. I was always taking stuff apart. I was one of those take apart kind of kids, you know the type. And so, and put back together again. My father, I didn't know that this made an impression on him, but he tells his friends the story of how on my Jeep the axle snapped, and I took it down to a professional welder, and instead of trying to buy a brand new part, I took it out. Went underneath the Jeep, propped it up, took it out. Went down to a welder, had him put it back together again, and I put it back in the Jeep, and that Jeep drove just fine after that. My father was amazed because he said, "Oh, it's going to cost you money to replace that part." I said, "No." I said, "I'm going to fix the one that I got." So it's always been kind of my thing, I think. So if that's your thing too, then I think it works for you to do restoration work because you have to also be a problem solver as well. And some people don't want to deal with that. That's understandable. Sometimes I don't want to deal with it, but I've got no choice. Do you have any experience with GMP guitars from California? Only people I know endorses Ryan Roxy and Gilby Clarke. Really, I know Gilby Clarke. And you thought, no, MC, I do not, because I don't know that. Let's take a look here. Damn it, we'll do it live like Bill O'Reilly. GMP guitars. Let's take a look. See what we got here. Okay, I have found it. Ooh, nice. So, what are we looking at here? It looks like they've got unfinished guitars. And, ooh, nice. Nice. Lots of different shapes. Oh, they have some finished ones as well. Oh, I got one here. It's teletype. Nice. What is it made out of? Maple, rosewood, alder. Nice. Yeah, these seem to be very nice. Prices are around 2,500 US dollars. Well, I'm quite sure that they're well made, and I'm going to bookmark that and take a look at that a little bit later, MC. I find that interesting. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Scott says, yep, you can feel when the guitar is exceptional. You really can. Mike, are there markets or areas where you don't bother looking for gear from? China. No, okay. Yeah, China, of course, without saying. Australia because of its distance. Um, Anywhere else? Russia, because there's some, you can run into some sketchy shit out of Russia. I mean, seriously, so I won't deal with that. And a couple other places. I just like I like the Far East. Far East, man. Far East Coast. That's my bread and butter. I know that area. So that's kind of where I look for gear at. I have a 1980 Gibson V. I need to refinish. I guess since it's getting cool outside, I may start soon. Demonetized. Hey, brother, how are you doing? Well, yeah. You know, the fall is a lovely time of year to do that kind of work because it's nice. During the daytime, it's somewhat stable temperatures, usually around 15 to 20 Celsius, and you can do painting work outside without getting any problems. I was having problems with my painting job, and I had a paint tin because of the heat. You know, the 3 days that I had, that 3 day stretch that I needed in order to do that work that I got was during a heat wave. So that's not good because I got some bubbling in it that I had to sort out. So yeah, it's a good time of year. Great time of year. Are vintage LTD SBs coming into used market with the same interest? I would say yes, yes. There are cats out there who really dig that. What's that guy's name? I forget what. He's a pretty big guitar YouTuber. He digs ESP guitars. So yeah, and he's young. He's young generation. So yeah, I think that there's a future for those. I've been thinking about putting a veneer on the V. Yeah, so you're gonna have to I guess I assume what kind of veneer you're thinking about, and some LTDs are collectible, very collectible if you find the right ones. I agree with that. Very interested in what veneer you're interested in putting on the demonetized. Yeah. So anyway, that's about it, guys. You know, in a nutshell, because there's value propositions on either side of that. Was my argument. I wasn't taking. I was giving the pros and cons of both sides. Obviously, for me, one works out for my situation, but one situation does not fit all situations. And so, therefore, when I wrote this out, I kind of went through, both sides of it and the pros, and cons of both. And I think if you take a listen to this tonight and you think about it, you'll know which side of that you fall on, I think, pretty much automatically. Some guys are going to be, new guitar buyers. Some guys are going to be restoration guys, and some guys are going to be that middle ground. They're going to buy the used ones, but pretty good condition and maybe a little bit of light restoration if needed. That's basically where I'm at. Flame top, nice. The only thing I haven't done was binding. Binding is really tough, man, and I would suggest you take and look at the tension amounts that you're going to need in order to hold those in place, keep them in place while they're setting. Really take a look at that. Binding is some serious work that I worked on that old Greco base that I had to restore the binding on, but not really. What I did is I fabricated some pieces and painted them to look like the pieces of binding that was missing on that guitar. So that was pretty neat. I think I showed that to you guys how that came out. That came out pretty sweet, actually. I'm actually particularly pleased with that. My painting skills, matching colors and things like it's just amazing because my eyes are terrible. Well, give me a pair of reading glasses and I can go to town. Yeah, man, dig that, guys. Just see where you fall in that. I'm not saying one is better than the other in tonight's discussion between buying new or restoration. I'm giving you the pros and cons of both and saying which side of that coin do you fall on. We all fall on a different one. Sometimes the coin lands on an edge. So that's you. You never know. But think about it. But in all of it, encase that thought with what is the best value proposition. And again, like that, and again, that kind of thinking can extend out to so many areas and so many other things, your purchases that you're making as consumers. So there's that, guys. Just I thought that I would do that. I'm actually impressed. I wrote that script and sat down and just it's just bullet points of things, and I didn't think that I had 45, 50 minutes worth of material. But I did. Um, you know, I'm impressed with that too. For a guy whose brain, who I started out by saying my brain wasn't working today, but apparently it is. I made my way through another live stream. Now I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Um, Lands on the edge trim, on an edge trim. Yeah, I bought Bob Ross the guitar paint demonstration. Yeah, Bob Ross. Boy, that's a name I haven't heard in years. All right, guys. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted, so I'm not even gonna get into any of the other part two of this. I had a second thing to talk about, but I'm not even gonna do it. Sorry, Mr. Lawson, that you were late, but happy that you're here. Good, but I'm wrapping up. I'm tired, guys. I gotta go to bed. I'm looking like Donnie Simpson. You know, I know you know. None of you guys know who that is. He was a host on BET for Video Soul back in the 80s, and he always had these heavy, lidded eyes, like the guy just smoked 10 joints. Yeah, that's great, man. I appreciate that. That's how he was. I'm getting tired, so I'm gonna call it quits, guys. Thank you so much for showing up to the live stream. I want to thank each and every one of you. Every time you guys never fail to show up. And even when I'm tired, even when I'm like, I still somehow or another can pull off a script to give you guys something to think about and to enjoy and to share and us to talk about. And that's just, that makes what doing these live streams really worthwhile to me. And I can't emphasize that. I say it every time at the end of every live stream. Maybe one of these days I'll say it with enough sincerity so you guys will believe me when I say from the heart, thank you so much for showing up tonight and always and each and every time. Thank you, Scott. Scott, you get better, man. Just heal up, brother. Heal up. I know you're fine. You'll be all right. Thank you, Maddie, for showing up. Benny, better late than never. Mr. Watson, all you guys, thank you so much for showing up as always and supporting me. Means a lot to me, guys. Means a lot. I'm going to go to bed. No beach volleyball for me. No, Scott. No, not for a while, buddy. You take care. All right, gentlemen and ladies, a good evening to you. I'm going to go from this chair to the next room to my bedroom and literally flop down into the pillow. Take care, guys. I'll see you on Saturday. I'll see you on Sunday for the Sunday night hump. Take care, guys. Bye.